Hi guys, I recently had a chat with a guy called Nadir Ahmed who runs an apologist website and claims that Islamic texts, specifically the Quran, is evidenced as being correct by something he calls modern science. When I asked him what exactly this term modern science meant, he admitted he had made it up to signify the scientific discoveries of the last, century or so. Whatever. Since he did not present any evidence during that chat, I will try this way to get some answers from this very peculiar Muslim who accuses others of thinking and doing things they have not even thought of themselves. Or maybe he is the world's first real psychic and I would have done what he accused me of, given sufficient time. Or he's just an obnoxious twat, so deluded and caught up in his imaginary world that others no longer see any benefit from any type of exchange or interaction with him. He loves patting himself on the back, as no one else is, and every 2 minutes repeats that he has demonstrated something as being correct when he has not even answered a basic question. Yet he insists that he is only there to help explain the texts of Islam, when he does not understand them properly himself, as he does not speak classic Arabic and only started learning standard Arabic 3 years ago. So this Nadir Ahmed believes at least one God he calls God exists, then a god-like being called Satan, and a whole selection of invisible creatures ranging from jinns to flying creatures of all shapes and sizes. That is his world. My world, however, consists of rational and logical thinking, of reality as described by science and driven by humanitarian personality. I don't understand his world, yet he claims he knows enough about my world to be able to establish that elements of my world, based in reality, actually confirm claims made in his holy book, based in his imaginary world. Because the measurements and observations made through science in the natural world are supposed to confirm something in his book, and then this somehow proves to him that this book is of supernatural origins. So let's take a closer look at his pages of evidence for statements which are substantiated by scientific findings and thus point to an obvious supernatural origin of the Quran. Now, I first need to apologize for a hasty conclusion, as the introductory sentence, "the following documents represent just some of the evidence," seemed to lack a word. But reading it several times does make it a viable sentence, because it can go "the following documents just some of the evidence." So that was my mistake. The other example I brought up with the archaeological digs, which confirms facts, is, I suppose, really an error. While we're here, let's stay with archaeology and the evidence in the real world. Let's look at all the digs which provide evidence and thus confirm sentences in the Quran. Digs, with an S, indicates a lot of evidence. Clicking on archaeology brings, only one single link, which leaves me somewhat disappointed. But then it says, finding the lost city of Iram. My hopes are elevated again. But alas, no, the dig is not in Iram, the city of 1,000 pillars, but in the ancient ruins of Ebla in today's Syria. And then only a tablet is said to mention Iram, the city of Iram, not the city of Iram with all its pillars, not Ad either. The source for all this, a popular magazine in its December 78 edition, mentioned, this tablet, National Geographic. And has anything changed in the last 33 odd years? No. I've found Islamic sites exclusively copy-paste the same stuff over and over, as though any of this article in National Geographic in any way agreed with or resembled the sentence in the Quran. Why does Nadir Ahmed consider this article in National Geographic to confirm the validity of a sentence in the Quran? Nobody knows. The city or men of Iram remain lost, just as the Haman remains a name mentioned in the book, never to be found. Okay, then a quick look at something Nadir terms scientific evidence, the cure for the bubonic plague, which according to Nadir is simple: kill all rats and dogs, keep the cats. However, if we take a deeper look at this, we find that this is not even evidence that the Quran could not have been written by man, but that hadiths, which are man-made texts, are now declared miraculous as well, and turn out to be just as wrong. We see that Nadir, the owner of this site, has found a line in the hadith where Muhammad declares that rat, the scorpion, the kites of like eagles and buzzards, and the rabid dog are the cause for mischief. What that mischief is, we don't learn. But Nadir knows. He knows it's the bubonic plague. He also knows that out of the 5 mentioned animals, the cause is primarily the rat. How does he know that? Well, nobody knows. But now, let's see exactly how much this agrees with modern science in a big way. It does not. A modern day evaluation shows that many more animals can be considered for the cause of the bubonic plague, and such as, surprise, surprise, the cat. Oops. He further cites the scientific and irrefutable authority on the plague, History for Kids, which says, "Today we do know what causes bubonic plague. It's the bacterium, and fleas carry it in the blood that they suck." So even a kid's page has more knowledge than Nadir, and he should have listened to the evaluation instead of embarrassing himself with ancient superstition. Nadir recommends that, while following a sentence based on nothing but this superstition, all rats and dogs in all countries be killed in all times to counteract the historical outbreak of a bacteria in the 14th century. But why does he exempt scorpions, kites and crows? They are also declared evil. How does he know the main culprit was the rat and exempts the lice, fleas, chipmunks, mice, prairie dogs, cats and squirrels? And how is this evidence for the accuracy of the Quran when this is a man-made episode in a hadith? Why does the hadith not mention the correct flow of events? Prevention of plague is done by eliminating areas where animals, especially rodents, congregate, and by avoiding the fleas the rodents carry. And then this bacterium can be transmitted to humans, usually by a vector such as fleas. And plague usually starts with a flea bite, where this bacteria, this Y. pestis, is transmitted from the flea bite site to lymph nodes as well, which swell up. So this type of plague is termed bubonic plague. So what we learn is that in real life, this bacterium has been the cause of plagues in different countries, the worst one having occurred in Europe in the 14th century. But would the killing of all rats at the time have provided an effective weapon against the outbreak? Yes, very likely. Is this what the sentence of the hadith states? 5 kinds of animals are mischief doers and can be killed? No, this is sheer projection. The page for kids further states that DNA evidence shows that the plague first came from China, and then goes on to explain that it happened in Constantinople during exactly the time period that we're talking about and the region. Okay, it doesn't show that or prove that the Quran is correct. Oh, yeah. Next, let's look at a different scientific evidence, a medical miracle claim. The Quran states in 2:233 that mothers shall suckle their children for 2 whole years. That's it, 2 whole years. UNICEF says that it is recognized at the period from birth and is a critical window, and that the breastfeed should happen exclusively for the first 6 months and continue for 2 years or more. Now, World Health Organization, the WHO, recommends breastfeeding up to 2 years or beyond. Are these based on scientific papers, studies, or experiments? No, they're just recommendations. They're taking a simple principle. Nature has taken 200,000 years and has come up with the contents of mother's milk and contains most nutrients a baby requires. It is something that was known, and it was commonplace and performed for thousands of years. Is that a miracle? I don't think so. Do either of these sources of Nadir say that a baby should be breastfed for exactly 2 years, as the Quran does? No, he's just making that up because he would like it to be true. One of the sources Nadir uses, a page for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, does not say anything about the duration of breastfeeding, but refers to the American Academy of Pediatrics, which recommends breastfeeding 12 months. WHO, we've just seen, 2 years or beyond. Now, if I try and retrace what happened, here, well, probably, somebody entered breastfeeding 2 years or something into Google and then looked for anything vaguely sounding like science. If a page is found which sounds scientific, put it down as evidence without actually understanding its contents and without looking at the papers themselves. So if I narrow it down and look only under scholar, I find no article stating that any scientist has issued a recommendation based on scientific principles that babies must, should, or ought to be breastfed for 2 years. Since we have modified our environment and humans are continuously evolving, the standard breastfeeding period is more like 6 months today, which anyone looking just a little bit deeper into this will easily find, but not our Nadir. And we see different papers here which actually warn from breastfeeding for too long. Does the Quran reflect this? No. There are multiple articles recommending the standard and acceptable time of 6 months, which is then augmented by solid food, and breastfeeding is up to the preferences of mother and child. So we see that the scientific approach is to keep the flexibility required and not preach one single time period dogmatically. In addition, using one of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as source does not necessarily mean this is a scientific institution. It does not even pretend to be, and when it comes to making a recommendation for breastfeeding period, it refers to the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And when it comes to real medical issues, they do have the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which contains more scholarly materials. But not the breastfeeding question. So we see that the claim that the Quran, with its dogmatic decree of women having to breastfeed their babies for 2 full years, is not substantiated by any branch or field of science. And a last question of how the Quran treats this topic comes up when you consider other sentences such as 46:15. And here it says the weaning of him was 30 months. Is it 24 or 30 months? Who knows? And as is usual in the Quran, take your pick as there are several options. Is this scientific? No. Nadir Ahmed claims that a single, what he calls miracle, would not be impressive. The only significance, according to him, develops when he finds this agreement of individual sentences with science happening again and again and again. And this apparently becomes impressive.
When it keeps happening over and over and over again, that's impressive to me.
But sorry, 0 and 0 and 0 and 0 is still equal to 0. So yes, I could go on and destroy all his other little strawmen he calls evidence on his site, but it's simply not worth it. I think what irritates me most about his attitude is that if confronted with straight question, he goes off on a tangent and evades any straight answers. Instead, he lances ad hominems like it's going out of fashion, puts up strawmen wherever he pleases, and dodges the real questions and issues.
You guys are going to interpret the Quran to read the science out of it.
Well, if dogma and polemics are what it takes to satisfy you, fine. But I prefer facts and the truth. It looks as though Nadir needs to examine, pardon the pun, the truth for quite some time, if he really wants to find. But I highly doubt that. Thanks for your time.